Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people.
Take us away when it comes to Jerome Powell. What has actually happened to him this week?
Well, this was a fairly astonishing intervention from the chairman of the Federal Reserve, who's normally a rather reserved kind of chap. I mean, that's the sort of person in that role who is very buttoned up and serious and doesn't tend to make splashy news. But on Sunday night, he recorded a video in which he revealed that he was under investigation by the Department of Justice, and that he thought that this was an entirely political move based on the fact that he has clashed with Donald Trump, who wants him to lower interest rates faster than he has been doing. They've had some very public arguments about that. And he set all of this out, absolutely foursquare, accusing the president of political interference in this investigation. And I mean, I was pretty surprised by seeing him do that, Anthony, were you?
Yeah, I mean, he is, as you mentioned, normally a restrained kind of guy, doesn't get involved in politics. And here he was putting politics directly on the table. All of this, the investigation is over renovations that have been happening to the Federal Reserve building and testimony that Jerome Powell gave before Congress about those renovations. Well, let's listen to Jerome Powell in that statement he had.
On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats.
My reaction to that, Sarah, is wow, because you don't often hear in those terms, with that degree of bluntness, Jerome Powell say anything about anything that isn't specifically monetary policy. The fact that he is taking the president on and doing so nakedly, so openly now, this is a new word.
Yeah, but he said, didn't he? Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. And that's obviously what he has decided to do in this particular case, and to call it out publicly.
Yeah, you don't get to be the chair of the Federal Reserve without understanding that every single word, every single pause, every single comma you say matters. You get to the point where you get very good at choosing your sentences carefully, because it can move markets. It can shift tectonic plates in the global economy. So here he was with a conscious decision to go straight at Donald Trump, really the first time he's ever done that publicly, knowing what that would amount to, a declaration of war or a line in the sand that this has to stop.
And actually, he has been getting a lot of applause from the left and the right for being somebody who is prepared to stand up to Donald Trump, even in the face of a potential criminal investigation. And there's been a lot of commentary I've seen, you probably have as well, Anthony, of people saying, if only everybody had the courage to call Donald Trump out when he's using the justice system in this way, or when he's trying to bully people into doing something. So, yeah, a lot of respect going towards Jerome Powell for that, at the very least.
Right. You got to remember what these threats are. Donald Trump has said Jerome Powell has been too late to reduce interest rates. He called him Jerome Too Late Powell. He says he's incompetent. But the latest attacks that Donald Trump has been launching are on that building on Constitution Avenue, the headquarters of the Federal Reserve. You can see it. It's not too far from the White House. It's been surrounded by cranes for the past few years. And he says that the cost overruns have been essentially corruption and mismanagement on the part of Powell. The building was built in the 1930s. It hasn't been renovated significantly since then, so it needed a lot of work. The original estimates for the renovation were $2.5 billion. Trump says now it's going to cost maybe upwards of $3.1 billion to finish the project. There have been accusations that it's full of luxury items. Powell has denied that.
Yeah, and Donald Trump has been trying to get at him over these building costs for quite a while. I remember a few months ago, President Trump went all the way down to the Fed building to do a tour of the renovations, which is not a normal thing for a president to do, to leave the White House to do something like that. And they ended up bickering about the costs actually in front of the TV cameras.
So we're taking a look, and It looks like it's about 3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
Yeah, it just came out.
Our notes had it about 3.1 as well.
3.1.
3.2.
This came from us?
Yes. I don't know who does that.
You're including the Martin renovation. You just added.
Our entire capital.
Yeah, you just added in a third building. Is what that is. That's a third building,
Well,
including
no,
the
but
Martin building.
it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall work.
But it's
So,
not new.
So we're going to take a look. We're going to see what's happening. And it's got a lot
Gloriously
of-
uncomfortable. And you can hear people feeding Donald Trump the information in the background there. Look, the big picture here is that when Donald Trump discovers who nominated Powell for this role, he's going to be very angry, isn't
Yeah,
he? 'Cause
exact
it
some
was one Donald
retribution, I
Trump.
would assume.
Exact some retribution, exactly. So back in 2017, he gets nominated by Donald Trump. But the relationship, to put it mildly, has soured. How normal is this? Well, the first bit and the second bit, very normal, actually. So presidents do nominate the chair of the Federal Reserve. The second bit is that they fall out. They always fall out, or often fall out. George W. Bush certainly fell out with whoever was in charge of the Fed when I was in D.C. doing your job, Sarah. And it was something that people talked about, and I think Bush actually wrote about later on. But crucially, because of the centralness of this relationship and the importance for the American economy and potentially for the global economy, which is something we'll get to in a bit, they don't fall out publicly. And what they certainly don't do is enter into these threats of criminal proceedings, etc., etc. But the bottom line is Donald Trump has decided, as presidents sometimes do, I want to run the economy hot. So he's got, his fiscal policy, his taxing and spending. He's got tax cuts happening and not enough spending cuts to match them. So heat there, but also he wants similar heat with monetary policy. He wants the Fed to lower interest rates, even though the Fed thinks that it would be unwise to lower them too much at the moment. Why? Because it creates inflation. It creates, crucially, inflation further down the road. But this is the point, isn't it, guys? It in the immediate short term, i.e. the months going up to November, I wonder what's happening in November. People will feel good.
Yeah, you'd reduce interest rates, people feel like they have more money in their pocket, and that would suit Donald Trump very well at the moment because he is looking at voters complaining about prices and about the affordability issue that there is here. He continues to say that affordability is a word that was made up by Democrats, but that doesn't stop the problem that voters are concerned about prices, and dropping interest rates would make them feel a little bit better.
That's the way the system was set up. It was set up to be insulated from these short-term political motivations. The people who are governors on the Federal Reserve are supposed to be thinking in the long term. They're supposed to be cooling some of the political impulses of presidents and members of Congress. They serve longer terms that overlap different administrations. And they're not supposed to be able to be fired by a president without cause. We've seen Donald Trump already try to fire Lisa Cook, who is one of the members of the Federal Reserve, a governor, alleging that she engaged in some sort of a mortgage fraud, although that hasn't been proven yet. And that case, actually, ironically enough, is going to be argued before the Supreme Court just next week about how much influence a president has on the makeup of the Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be independent. So all of this is kind of coming together all at once, and the stakes are high because it is the health of the U.S. economy and the economic system that the Americans have right now that is at stake.
There's a delicious irony to this, Justin. Jerome Powell's term actually runs out in May. Donald Trump will be shot of him really quite soon. Except he can stay on as one of the governors, so not the chairman anymore, but one of the governors, therefore with an important decision-making role, for another couple of years after that. A lot of people thought he wasn't going to bother. People around the Fed say he's looking burnt out and tired and he'll probably just retire from the whole thing. But if anything is going to make him determined to stay on, it's going to be this row that he's having with Donald Trump. Plus, Not only are Democrats angry about this, you've got some Republicans in Congress deeply, deeply concerned about this, including one, Tom Tillis, who actually chairs the committee that will approve the new Fed chairman, whom Donald Trump will get to nominate. He says they're not going to approve that unless this threat against Jerome Powell is taken away. So Donald Trump might end up with Powell on the board for another couple of years and possibly not even being able to replace him as the chairman, precisely because he's gone after him quite so hard.
It's really interesting. It goes to the heart of what populism is, in a way, doesn't it? And the way that Trump wants to govern. Because there is I sort of dimly remember this from undergraduate economics. There is an argument about whether or not you are giving away too much democratic power when you allow central bankers to set interest rates, given how important monetary policy is to everything we do. But the counter argument is exactly the one you've just been talking about, both of you, that an economy that is well run and stable and provides long-term goods for everyone is an economy where there is a separation between the political and the technical when it comes to monetary policy. And it's interesting that Donald Trump is moving in the direction of directly challenging that and saying, no, it should be me because I am elected by the people and the people ought to have a say in all of this. And you do wonder the extent to which there are other people around the world, other strong men or potential strong men, perhaps some strong women as well, who are looking at the Fed and what happens with Jerome Powell and whether Trump is successful, and indeed whether he's successful with his successor in persuading him to put or her to put interest rates down further than they should be, whether that actually does have a kind of domino effect across the world.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting after Powell made this statement on Sunday night, a bunch of former Federal Reserve governors came out with a statement. And one of the things they said was this is kind of developing country, Tin Pot dictatorship type of behavior that, one of the things that global economists try to prevent is having leaders of countries take over the monetary policy of their nations to try to goose the economy, and what they end up doing is having this incredibly high inflation, whether it's in South America or African nations or elsewhere. This is a pattern that is not one that the United States should follow, not a path that it should go down. But if the United States does this, then is it going to be in a position to tell all of these other countries that no, what you're doing is a bad economic idea? I mean, we're leading by example one way or the other.
Yeah, and this sent shockwaves around the world. You had central bankers from across Europe all the way to Korea saying this is a terrible thing. You had former chairs of the Fed, all sorts of economists, and Wall Street people coming out and saying they were deeply, deeply worried about this. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, actually went on the record saying he was concerned about this, and he's normally pretty careful about what he says in the political arena. So, I mean, it's had repercussions already. Though it was really interesting what happened to the stock market, because of course, that's the one thing that might affect Donald Trump's thinking. It fell quite precipitously on Monday morning, and the dollar weakened and all sorts of things like that. By the end of the day, Monday, though, things are running so hot in the economy here, it was actually up at an all-time high, the S&P.
Yeah, and isn't that Trump's point, actually? And he made this point. In fact, we should listen to it. He made exactly this point to business people quite recently. He was talking directly about Jerome Powell, and he was talking to the Detroit Economic Club. So he's on his visit to Michigan, and he makes that point about the impact that low interest rates could have on the economy and on actual businesses and actual people.
Today, if you announce great numbers, they raise interest rates to try and kill it. So you can never really have the kind of rally you should have. What happens and what we want, we're going to have a lot of great months, a lot of great quarters. I want the market to go up. You announce unbelievable numbers and the market goes down because they know you're going to do everything possible. In the Fed, we have a real stiff in the Fed, but that's for another day. And just last week, the average 30-year mortgage dropped below 6% for the first time in many years. It's coming down very rapidly, and that's not with the help of the Fed. If I had the help of the Fed, it would be easier. But that jerk will be gone soon.
That jerk will be gone soon. That's interesting from a president who said on Sunday that he knew nothing about this investigation into Powell, and it had nothing to do with him whatsoever.
Right. I mean, he was pretty explicit. But, we've heard Donald Trump talk about prosecuting his political adversaries before. I mean, he was explicit with James Comey and Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, and then indictments came out just a few days later. He hasn't said anything like that about Jerome Powell, but I think most people think that is what he's thinking. Certainly, a lot of the Republicans who have come out and condemned what Donald Trump did implied that was that Trump was the one behind this. That is, this didn't just come out of nowhere. But yeah, we do see a lot of this hysteria, could I call it, concern over something Donald Trump does with the economy, whether it's tariffs now or interest rates or the spending bill, and the stock market drops. And then, Sarah, as you mentioned, it goes back up again. Nothing seems to be able to put a lasting dent in the economy, at least so far, whether that's because people realize their worst fears aren't being realized. They think Donald Trump is more Bluster after a day or two to kind of mull over it. But for one reason or another, the economy keeps chugging along. Now, the business cycle being what it is, the economy will eventually have a downturn. But predictions of its demise have been greatly exaggerated over the course of the last year.
But isn't that why, actually, the financial community, both inside the US and actually worldwide, have taken this relatively calmly? When you think of the stakes, I mean, this is a huge, huge deal. It's alongside, I don't know, snatching Maduro or all the other kind of big kinetic things that Donald Trump has done or ordered. This, if he goes ahead with it, and if there is a full criminal prosecution, is a massive deal because of the impact that it has. But actually, business people in the United States, financiers inside the United States at Wall Street, but also, really crucially, the bond markets around the world, the people who lend America money and would be very worried about rampant inflation in the future. And as Anthony, as you say, the Supreme Court is about to, I mean, it's a different case, isn't it? But if the Supreme Court decides that the president can't get rid of someone unless they've got very good reason to do it, that presumably bolsters Jerome Powell's standing.
And it is funny. One of the things the Supreme Court has said in past cases where it's been looking over Donald Trump's decision to fire supposedly independent heads of agencies is that the Federal Reserve is different. It's somehow unique. And so a lot of people who are going to be watching the court here are expecting the court to come out and say, you have to have more evidence in order to remove a Fed governor than just you don't like the person's politics or you have some sort of unconfirmed allegations of impropriety, which is what we have in the case of Lisa Cook. So it's not to the point, I guess we can say, where the people who really do hold the levers of power in the economy, the global economy, are too worried about Trump. They catch their breath every so often. They express surprise. The monocles pop out of their eyes every now and then. But as far as really being down on all of this and worrying about worst case scenarios, they don't seem to be buying into that.